Ukraine's sky is a battlefield. Every night Russian cruise missiles and drones come hunting, and every night Ukrainian pilots rise to stop them. Since day one of the full-scale Russian invasion, Ukraine's Air Force has been outgunned, outnumbered, and flying against the odds, but against all expectations, they are still in the fight. All Soviet MiGs, modernized Su-27s, and recently acquired F-16s and Mirage aircraft, everything is being used to stop Russian airstrikes before they reach their targets. Ukrainian pilots aren't just defending airspace, they're defending cities, power plants, and the people below. One mistake, one missile that slips through, and lives are lost. So how does Ukraine Air Force manage to fight off waves of Shahed drones and Russian cruise missiles with limited resources? What weapons do they use, and what challenges do they face every night? Let's talk about it. Ukraine's Air Force entered the war in Donbas in 2014 completely unprepared for modern warfare. Before that, it has been neglected for decades. Low funding, outdated jets, and barely enough pilots to keep planes in the air. It seems that the pro-Russian corrupted government of Viktor Yanukovych ruling Ukraine before the Revolution of Dignity did everything possible to ruin the armed forces of Ukraine and prepare the country to capitulation even before the Russian invasion had started. But when Russia initiated the separatist uprising in Donetsk and Luhansk, Ukrainian pilots were suddenly thrown into combat. At first, in 2014, they dominated the sky. MiG-29s, Su-25s, and Su-24s launched airstrikes on Russian positions, helping Ukrainian ground forces push back. Of course, we call them Russians because, as we know, the hybrid war in Donbas was planned by Russians, backed by Russians, and led by Russians. And during the first months, the Ukrainian Air Force was making a difference until Russia escalated. By mid-2014, Russia started secretly supplying the hybrid troops in Donbas with advanced surface-to-air missiles. First came the Manpads, that were shoulder-fired missiles that made low-altitude attacks dangerous for Ukrainian pilots, and then in July 2014, the real game-changer appeared, the Russian Buk missile system. On 14th of July 2014, a Ukrainian An-26, that is a transport aircraft, was shot down at 6,500 meters. That is too high for separatist weapons. That was the first clear sign that Russian forces were directly involved in the war on the Ukrainian territory, while Putin was claiming that there were no Russian troops neither in Donbas nor in Crimea. Just days later after that, a Su-25 attack jet was hit by a missile, again at high altitude. And then came 17th of July 2014, when Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 was shot down by a Russian Buk system, killing 298 civilians on board. The world saw what Ukraine's pilots already knew. They were not just fighting separatists, they were fighting against Russia itself. And speaking of people on board of MH17, the Terrorist Federation still denies its involvement in killing those people, even after it was confirmed by the joint investigation team that the passenger airplane heading from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was shot down by a Russian system delivered from the Russian territory. By the end of 2014, Ukraine has lost over 20 aircraft, jets, helicopters, and transport planes. The risk was too high. One by one, fighter jets stopped flying in Donbas. By 2015, Ukraine's Air Force was effectively grounded in the east, forced to rely on drones, artillery, and ground forces instead. As you probably know, drones were not used for striking Russians until 2022. They were only used for surveillance and coordination of artillery strikes. For the next 7 years, Ukrainian pilots trained, modernized what little they had, and prepared for what many feared was coming, a full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. When that war finally came to Ukrainian land in February 2022, Ukraine's Air Force was ready to fight, fully aware that the challenge of countering the overwhelming Russian Air Force was extremely hard. So, how did Ukraine's pilots survive the first weeks of the invasion? How did they keep flying despite Russia's overwhelming air power? Let's take a look. On 24th of February 2022, Russia launched its full-scale invasion with a massive missile barrage. Air bases across whole Ukraine were hit: Ivano-Frankivsk, Lutsk, Staro-Konstantinov, Mirhorod. Russia expected to wipe out Ukraine's air force on the ground, just like they did in Georgia in 2008. But Ukraine's pilots were already in the air. They have received last-minute warnings, scrambled their jets, and relocated to smaller hidden airstrips. Some even took off before the first missiles hit. When Russian Su-35s and MiG-31s entered Ukrainian airspace expecting no resistance, they were met by Ukrainian MiG-29s and Su-27s ready to fight. With major air bases under attack, Ukraine's air force became mobile, constantly shifting locations. Pilots relied on hit-and-run tactics, launching from one location, striking, and landing somewhere else before the enemy could track them. Even without modern missiles, they still scored kills. On 24th of February, a Ukrainian MiG-29 over Kyiv reportedly took multiple Russian aircraft that led to the legend of the Ghost of Kyiv. The first months of the Russian invasion saw some of the most significant Air Force operations. 5th of March 2022, a Ukrainian Su-27 bombed Millerovo Air Base in Russia, destroying enemy aircraft on the ground. March-April 2022, Ukrainian jets fought over Mykolaiv and Odessa, defending against Russian bombers. 14th of April 2022, a Ukrainian Su-27 played a key role in distracting Russian defense, while Neptune missiles sank the Moskva, the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Despite losses, Ukrainian Air Force kept flying. Old Soviet jets, smart tactics, and pure determination was something that kept them in the fight, but they needed something more: modern weapons. And when Western missiles finally arrived, the battle for the skies changed completely. However, with growing Ukraine's defense capabilities, the Russian strikes also changed. They became more massive, involving not only Russian cruise missiles, but also Iranian-built kamikaze drones known as Shahed. Initially, they were produced and shipped by Iran, but later the terrorist regime of Khamenei helped Russians build a drone factory on the territory of the terrorist federation itself. So, what kind of challenges do Ukrainian pilots face nowadays? Let's talk more about it. Every night, Ukraine's sky turns into a battlefield, my friends. Russian cruise missiles and drones come in waves, aiming for power plants, military bases, and civilian homes. And every night, Ukrainian pilots are out there trying to stop them. Russian cruise missiles like Kalibr, Ha-101 and Iskander-K are known for flying low, fast, and unpredictably. Ukrainian MiG-29 and Su-27 pilots have to spot them visually, lock on, and fire before their escape, all while flying at supersonic speeds. However, there is another challenge: Shahed drones. They come in dozens, flying slowly but low and sometimes just meters off the ground. They're too small for traditional radars, forcing pilots to rely on guns and heat-seeking missiles to take them down. A single fighter jet might have to shoot down 5, 10, even 15 in one mission. And this challenge requires a completely different approach, because Shahed drones fly at relatively slow speed. So what's the problem, you may ask? Shahed is slow and flies in a straight line, right? But for a fighter pilot, it's actually one of the trickiest missions. The slow speed is the problem. A Shahed 136 drone cruises at around 180 kilometers per hour. That is about 110 miles per hour. That is barely faster than a highway car. Compare that to a fighter jet. MiG-29 has a stall speed of 240 to 160 kilometers per hour. F-16 stalls at about 250 to 175 kilometers per hour, and Mirage 2000 stalls at 205 to 120 kilometers per hour. Fighter jets are not designed to fly that slow for long. If they slow down too much, they risk stalling, which means losing lift and control. That basically causes an aircraft to crash. It means that pilots have to fly at the absolute edge of their aircraft capabilities, carefully managing their throttle, flaps, and angle of attack to stay airborne without stalling and crashing. At the same time, the pilots have to track and line up the moving target, often at night and sometimes relying only on visuals. Heat-seeking missiles work, of course, but they're expensive. So at times pilots are forced to use guns, which means getting even closer to their targets at slow speeds. Basically, it's like using a race car to chase a bicycle. Now, for every missile Ukraine intercepts, another is already on the way, my friends. Missiles cost millions. Shaheds cost 50,000 each, and Russia keeps building more. Ukraine's Air Force has already done the impossible, but they need more jets, more missiles, and more support to keep up. Can Ukraine keep defending its skies? And what happens in case NATO's biggest ally, the US, stops providing its air-to-air missiles to Ukraine? Can they be supplanted? If the US ever stops supplying AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles, broadly used by Ukrainian pilots today to intercept Russian air threats, Ukraine's Air Force will need European alternatives, and luckily there are solid options. The first one is Iris-T, made in Germany, sometimes referred to as AIM 2000. This is the best direct replacement for AIM-9. It has a modern infrared seeker, high off-board sight capability, and thrust vectoring, making it highly maneuverable. The Iris-T is already integrated on F-16s and Mirage 2000s, meaning Ukraine could use it with just minimal modifications. Then comes Mika IR, made in France. Mika IR, used on the Mirage 2000 and Rafale, is another excellent choice. It has a longer range than AIM-9, about 50 kilometers, and it can also work in both short and medium range fights. Unlike Iris-T, it doesn't have thrust vectoring, but it's still a deadly modern air-to-air missile. Option number 3 is SRAM, made in UK. The Advanced Short-Range Air-to-Air Missile, or SRAM, used by the UK's Typhoons and F-35s, is faster than AIM-9 and has a longer range. So which one is best for Ukraine? If Ukrainian Air Force needs a direct AIM-9 replacement, Iris-T is the best choice, but if it wants a missile that can double as a medium-range weapon, Mika IR is ideal. And then if speed and range are the priority, SRAM is a strong option. So if the US ever cuts off AIM-9 deliveries, Ukraine won't be left defenseless. European missiles are just as capable and in some cases even better. For over 3 years, Ukraine's pilots have been fighting an air war like any other. Outnumbered and facing one of the most advanced air forces in the world, they were expected to fall within days. Instead, they adapted, outmaneuvered, and survived. From the desperate dogfights of February 2022 to intercepting missiles and drones every night, they have kept Ukraine in the fight. They've shot down cruise missiles at hypersonic speeds. They hunted Shahed drones while flying on the absolute edge of a stall and launched daring strikes deep into Russian territory, all with limited resources and aging aircraft. But this war is far from over. Ukraine's pilots need better weapons, more modern jets, and continued support to keep protecting their cities and their soldiers. Western missiles like AIM-9 do help, but if they disappear, European weapons like Iris-T, Mika, and SRAM can step in. The battle for Ukraine's sky is a battle for Ukraine's survival, and as long as those pilots keep flying, Ukraine stands. Dear friends, let me know in the comments if you liked this one. Also, don't hesitate to like, share and traditionally subscribe. My name is Operator Starsky. Thanks for watching.